I was wrong about Spencer Strider. Back in July, I made a video about Michael Harris and Spencer Strider where I called them both really good players. And while Michael Harris has continued with his incredible rookie season, Spencer Strider hasn't, because he hasn't just been incredible, he's been historic. And I don't just mean that he looks historical because of this mustache. I mean that he's breaking records. He's been one of the best starting pitchers in the major leagues since he entered the rotation. In fact, if he had joined the Braves rotation just a month earlier, he could probably be the frontrunner for the Cy Young Award.
Let's go! Sweet 16 for Spencer Strider and a new Atlanta record!
I have a quick bio of him in the first video, but in case you haven't seen it, let me give you a quick rundown. Strider was a 4th round draft pick in the shortened 2020 draft. He hadn't pitched that much during his 3 seasons at Clemson thanks to a Tommy John surgery his sophomore year, but the 12 innings that he pitched in the 2020 college baseball season before it was cancelled was enough for the Braves to take a chance on the righty. With the way Spencer Strider has pitched this season, something I'll get to in a minute, he's looked more like a 1st overall pick than a 4th rounder. After all, if the Tigers could go back in time, I'm sure they'd rather have a guy who has a 5-WAR season just 2 years after being picked in the draft than Spencer Torkelson, who was so bad they sent him down for a month and a half. So how did Strider fall all the way down to the 4th round? Well, actually, the question isn't how he wasn't drafted earlier, it's why he was drafted at all in the 5-round draft. Let's look at his college stats. Although his college career was fairly brief, just 63 total innings at Clemson, nothing about these numbers scream getting drafted in the 5-round draft at all. So what did the Braves see in Strider in the 12 innings that he did pitch in 2020 that convinced them to take a chance on him in the first place? Turns out, he changed everything. Not only did he go from this jerky motion to this smoother, more deliberate pitching motion, he also changed his entire pitch repertoire. The 100-mile-an-hour fastball and nearly impossible to hit slider wasn't something he actually threw at Clemson. After his Tommy John surgery, he changed his delivery altogether and abandoned the 2-seamer he relied on heavily at Clemson, as well as his survey secondary, and swapped it out for the overpowering fastball-slider combo we know him for now. Because of that, it's no wonder no other team took a chance on the 21-year-old with 63 college innings pitched. In his only minor league season, Strider blazed through every single level, eventually making a 2-inning cameo with the big league club at the end of the season. But this still wasn't enough for Strider to appear on any prospect top 100 list. Despite all the strikeouts in the minors, and I mean all the strikeouts, he struck out 39.3% of all the batters he faced, there were still concerns that his control just wasn't there and that he'd be destined for the bullpen. And that's where he started the season for Atlanta, but clearly that's not where he's gonna end it. When I made the Harris Strider video, Huckleberry Strider had only been starting for about a month, and he'd been quite good. Still, I had my concerns. One was that he couldn't continue suppressing homers like he had been, and the other was that his walk rate might be too high to be successful. Turns out, I was very wrong about both. Not only has he continued to suppress the long ball, he's also managed to limit the walks as well. And to be fair, I should have seen this coming. His walk rate, which had been at 18% during the first month, had already started declining by the time he was in the rotation. It's essentially sat at 8.5% since May, and it was lower than 7% in August. An 8.5% walk rate isn't exactly what you'd like from a starter, but when you strike out 38% of the batters you face and rarely allow home runs, it turns out that walks actually don't matter that much. And this is where Strider has separated himself from being great to outright historic. In a September start against the Rockies, Strider did this.
And when he pitches at the top of the zone, he becomes unhittable at times.
At the knees, strike 3 called. Strider's off to a good start. Spencer Strider, 6 strikeouts for Strider.
This is the highest stage of baseball, and it looks like he's playing at the wrong game.
Wow. At the knees, that ties his career high. 13 of them. Swing and a miss. It's a new career high. 14. That ties the Atlanta record.
Let's go.
Sweet 16 for Spencer Strider and a new Atlanta record.
That's 16 strikeouts, no walks, no runs, and 8 innings. These 16 strikeouts set a Braves 9-inning strikeout record, breaking John Smoltz's 15K mark. But breaking franchise records in his rookie season wasn't enough for Strider. He needed to break a major league record. And he did. Of course he did. By hitting the 200 strikeout mark in just 130 innings, he broke Randy Johnson's 21-year-old record, becoming the fastest pitcher to 200 strikeouts by an inning basis. Let me repeat, this 23-year-old rookie, a guy no one had on their top 100 prospects list coming into the season, a guy who probably shouldn't even been drafted at all his junior year, broke a record set by one of the most proficient strikeout pitchers in all of Major League history. And he might not be done, because at this moment, he's only allowed 86 hits. And with just 2 starts left for the rookie, he could become the first player ever to have a 200 strikeout season without allowing 100 hits. The first player ever. But it's not just the record-setting strikeout pace that has made Strider so incredible. It's the fact that his 2.67 ERA is unlucky. Let's look at fielding independent pitching. If you don't know what fielding independent pitching is, is, or FIP, here's a quick rundown. FIP takes the fielders out of the equation, instead focusing on what is theoretically in the pitcher's control. These are strikeouts, walks, homers, and hit batsmen. So now that you know how FIP is calculated, let's look at Spencer Strider's. If you just assume average defense, you could expect Strider to allow 1.3 runs per 9 innings based solely on what he does control. If a pitcher walks a lot of guys and allows a lot of homers, he's going to have a high FIP. If he strikes out a lot of guys, doesn't walk anyone, and never allows homers, he's not human, aka Jacob DeGrom. Strider walks people, but he actually allows fewer homers than DeGrom. Because of this, Strider's 183 FIP is actually better than all but 2 of DeGrom's seasons, those of course being the last 2 seasons for DeGrom. Essentially, Strider is DeGromming it at a younger age, and their similarities are much stronger than their strikeouts or their FIPs. Like DeGrom, who was a 9th round draft pick in the 2010 draft, Strider was a relative unknown, and like DeGrom, Strider wasn't considered a valuable prospect when he came up. But there are 2 major differences between the two. The first is age of debut. DeGrom was a month away from being 26 when he first came up in 2014. Strider wasn't even 23. And for DeGrom, it took him a few seasons and an inspirational conversation with Terry Collins to really start lighting up the world. Strider just needed 1 season in the minors. The second is height. It is easier, though of course not a given, to be an overwhelming presence when you're a bigger and taller pitcher. After all, Randy Johnson, whose record Strider just broke, is 6'10". DeGrom isn't quite as tall, but he does have 4 inches on Strider. And despite his height, Strider, as Jay Jaffe quoted a writer who he couldn't remember, is like having a prime era closer for 5 or 6 or even 8 innings. Strider is a top 10 major league starter right now, and this is despite pitching 30 fewer innings than anyone else on that list. And while there's still a lot of debate over which Brave deserves the Rookie of the Year award, and I think either could win without it being much of a snub for the other candidate. Here's my opinion on who should take home the award. Michael Harris is having an incredible season for a rookie. Spencer Strider is having an historic season for a starter, regardless of rookie or veteran status. Wait guys, what is this? Oh no.